It is working. Keep doing it. That's the message on this holiday weekend from authorities who fear Americans, lifted by encouraging headlines about the pace of COVID cases, could drop their guard and easily send numbers soaring again. And to be very clear here, we are still deep in the woods with this. Americans are dying at a blistering pace tonight as the worldwide total now tops 100,000. Again, our team is fanned out to cover it all. Let's start with NBC's Gabe Gutierrez.
Tonight, the wail of ambulances in New York is less frequent. The state announced fewer ICU admissions and fewer deaths from coronavirus than the day before. The most encouraging sign yet that the curve is flattening. But the governor says it's too soon to relax.
I mean, I still want to know how this happened, because the warning signs were there. And if you don't know the answer, then how do you know it's not going to happen again?
And the pandemic's death toll here in the nation's epicenter could be much higher. During the first 5 days of April, more than 1,100 people were pronounced dead in their home or on the street. That's 8 times as many as last year. Since many were never tested, they're not included in the official count. New York authorities are begging residents to keep social distancing. Why not close the parks here, much like LA did?
People have practiced shelter in place, but it's 8.6 million people in a very small space, and they have to have some outlet.
We spoke one-on-one with Mayor Bill de Blasio today after he toured a new temporary hospital at the National Tennis Center, the iconic site of the U.S. Open. This facility will have nearly 500 beds. Yeah. Will we need all of them?
What a blessing it would be if we didn't need all of them.
Though hospitalizations are down, the health system is still stressed.
It doesn't seem like it's slowing down.
Dr. Ernest Patty is at hard-hit St. Barnabas Hospital in the Bronx.
Let's hope we reach that plateau at some point soon, or we flatten the curve. I'm hopeful.
Amy Breslow is hopeful too. We first spoke to her days ago as her sick husband waited for a plasma transplant. He didn't get one, but he's recovering anyway.
I feel blessed. It's amazing. It's a miracle that he is here. We're so lucky to have him and, to have this second chance.
Still, the virus is ravaging places like Long Island. Among the lives lost there, nurse Ali Dennis Guillermo, who had come from the Philippines to provide a better life for his family. He was just 44. Mo Albanese was a fixture at this butcher shop in New York's Little Italy. His parents started the business in the 1920s. Luciano Ferraro was a beloved doorman in Manhattan who loved his family in Peru.
He wanted us to feel good when we came home. And so there was always a smile. We were like, he would see us walking down the street and he would run to open the door for us. Just was such a good person.
And tonight, a moving tribute. Volunteer firefighter and EMT Michael Field died from the virus after rescuing a COVID patient. For his service, a final salute. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News, New York.
I'm Miguel Almaguer. On this Good Friday, just ahead of Easter Sunday, our nation has reason for optimism even in the face of adversity. 1 month ago, roughly 1,000 Americans tested positive for the coronavirus. Today, as that number surges towards 500,000, our death toll is climbing, but social distancing is saving lives. In the state of Kentucky, Julia Donahue was the first known coronavirus patient.
I'd be gasping for air. It felt like I was just suffocating.
Donahue spent 9 days on a ventilator and almost didn't make it to her 28th birthday.
Nobody's safe from the virus. You don't know how it's going to affect you.
With Pennsylvania at some 20,000 cases, the White House is worried Philadelphia will become the next hotspot. The city of brotherly love, a ghost town. This sports arena, now a field hospital. Morgan Radford is in Philly.
The number of cases is expected to peak here early next week, which is why the National Guard is standing by, and field hospitals like this one are now preparing to receive patients.
As the city of Chicago braces for a peak in patients tomorrow,
we've just been crying so much.
In Michigan, nurses and doctors are keeping video diaries, chronicling their struggle as the state becomes one of the hardest hit in the country.
You see a lot of people who aren't that far off from my age. It's hard not to be scared.
This week, Detroit lost fire captain Franklin Williams, a loving husband and father of 7. The man who raced into burning buildings died from complications of the virus.
I was just calling to check on him, and that's how I found out he was gone. I'm sorry. It feels like one of the worst things I ever had to experience.
As heartbreaking images like these emerge from Americans flooding food banks that are overwhelmed and understocked, there is worry this holiday weekend many will ease from the very measure saving lives. Oakland is closing 74 miles of city streets so pedestrians can maintain social distance. And in Beverly, Massachusetts, narrow sidewalks are now one way for foot traffic to avoid bunching.
You guys are ready to go?
But as the virus changes the way we live, older Americans are paying a deadly toll. NBC News is tracking nearly 2,500 long-term care facilities in 36 states, where cases have quintupled in just 10 days. At least 2,200 have died. But amid so much heartbreak, there are also heartwarming stories of survival. In South Florida, staff line the halls to say goodbye to Carlos and Doriela. The couple, married for 45 years, were discharged together after 19 days in the hospital, leaving side by side, holding hands as they always do. In South Carolina, another sweet send-off, this one for Louise Beal.
Everybody was so wonderful to me.
The feisty 81-year-old beat the virus, but couldn't do it alone.
It's about to be Easter, so what else can you ask for? She's here by God's grace and mercy and the wonderful help from the staff.
Tonight, a reminder, hope trumps fear. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
And tonight, as we begin the Easter weekend, religious leaders are pleading with their congregations to stay home. The critical message being followed in most of the country, but not everywhere. Here's Stephanie Gosk.
The pews sit empty. Churches are quiet. The Easter weekend is supposed to be a time to congregate. But tonight, most congregations are being told to stay home. Health officials have warned against any kind of gathering. Religious services are no exception.
I was in hospital for 21 days in ICU and then isolation.
Reverend Timothy Cole held services at Christ Church in D.C. just before he was hospitalized with coronavirus. Nearly 400 of his parishioners had to self-isolate. This weekend, his sermons will be virtual.
If anyone was to come to church and get the virus and die, then I think we would all feel really terrible.
Some states have banned religious gatherings altogether. This month, there are important Jewish, Muslim, and Christian holidays. But in Florida, the governor remains unwavering.
The state of Florida is not going to, through government coercion, close a church, synagogue, or place of worship.
Some religious leaders have taken a similar stance, defying recommendations. In Kansas, state reps overturned the governor's ban. But many are taking steps to stay safe regardless of government mandate. In Rome, the Vatican canceled public masses. NBC's Matt Bradley.
This is the most important time of year here at the Vatican, but you wouldn't know it from walking around St. Peter's Square. This place should be packed, but the Vatican is finding other ways of reaching out, like streaming services, methods the Pope calls creativity of love.
As an example, the Archbishop of New Orleans joining a rabbi to bless their city from the skies today. And for those who worship from home this weekend, a simple message.
You can take away the building, but you can't take away the church.
Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
Many health experts and a growing list of governors are warning the only safe way to reopen the economy is to test for exposure to the virus on a massive scale. And that's just one of 3 tools necessary. But we are nowhere near that capability. Tom Costello has more on the challenge ahead.
From governors in virus hot zones tonight, a plea for population-wide testing as a condition to reopen the economy.
We're going to have all sorts of protections in place, and we're going to have a lot more testing.
We are particularly short on the test kits to be able to test for the virus.
Overnight, FedEx distributing 500,000 test kits arriving on a military flight from Italy. Without a vaccine or treatment, public health officials say there are 3 keys to reopening the economy. A diagnostic test to determine if someone currently has the virus, 2.2 million so far. An antibody test to determine if somebody's already had it and therefore might have some immunity. And contact tracing to identify anybody who's had contact with somebody who's infected. But so far, less than 1% of the population has been tested. Today, New York Governor Cuomo called on the Trump administration to lead the effort.
We need an unprecedented mobilization where government can produce these tests in the millions.
The president, anxious to get Americans back to work, was asked today what metrics he'll use.
The metrics right here. That's my metrics. That's all I can do.
Mr. Trump insisting he will follow the expert advice, though widespread testing doesn't have to be a precondition.
Should Americans have to decide between staying healthy and going back to work?
Look, I think we're going to do both. We're going to go back to work and we're going to stay healthy. We're going to do testing, but you don't need to test 325 to 350 million people.
Health experts warn infection rates could soar if the economy is reopened too quickly, without a handle on who is and isn't infected.
It's his choice, but I certainly will continue, as I've always had, to give my honest assessment of the scientific and data that is really the evidence that I base my judgments on.
Dr. Fauci and others say they need an accurate read on the national infection rate, something they don't have. Helping with that effort, 2 arch rivals, Google and Apple, teaming up to build phone software that would alert people who'd recently had contact with someone who's infected, hoping to save critical time. The president says next week he will convene a new council comprised of business leaders and doctors focused on drafting a timeline to get the economy reopened again.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.